My next guest on the end of the bench is Kinori Rosnow, a very successful player. Currently played a little bit with the Outlaws, played at Oberlin, and was on the Japanese national team when they played in Israel last. How are you doing today, Kinori?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Good. Doing well. So just to kind of get right into it, you're a West Coast guy. West Coast is definitely getting bigger in lacrosse, but when you kind of started playing, like how old were you and how did you get into it in Washington?
I was I like in sixth grade or something? There was a bunch of my friends and just people in my grade were like, we're going to try lacrosse, except it wasn't really an organized sport. Some history teacher was like, I guess we'll learn the game together and I'll have you guys run around in a field with sticks or something. And so that's kind of how we started learning. Nobody told us how to pass and catch, or if they did, it was from a YouTube video, that they saw themselves. And so some of the kids knew about organized like clubs outside of school, but I didn't. So I just started that way. And I actually couldn't pass and catch until about the end of my sophomore year of high school. Because just like I would always, face someone and I'd like, kind of like do this thing and just do whatever I feel like, just saw other people doing it. There wasn't much coaching to that degree. And then someone was like, you pass funny. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So then I fixed that. And yeah, that was interesting. It was growing a lot when I was there. There were some teams that were, going out east, even with their high school team. There were club teams that would go out that way, but I didn't know much about them. And now it's exploded. I mean, there's so many more schools. A lot of there were like combined school teams that have now split up into the individual schools. It's much bigger sport there, and it's really exciting. There's a ton of divisions. It used to just be like a division 1 and 2, teams that could compete, and then teams that were just doing it more recreationally. And now they even have it by size of school. They have it private versus public. There's a lot more leagues, and it's exciting to see. So that's what that was like. It was a little weird getting recruited from there because you would have to travel out east to get seen. At that time, I guess Denver was the only D1 team out there. Not that I was ready for a Division I school at all. But yeah, no, we would always have to travel out east, and that would, that cost money. So some kids couldn't do it. So yeah, I think there was a lot of talent that was missed out on. Some really athletic kids who were like, they would be football stars or some other sport, and then they wouldn't be seen by a lacrosse coach because they couldn't pay for a couple of flights, to go out east. And yeah. So that was just a very different situation. But there were some really athletic players that probably could have been really good.
Yeah, I know you are a West Coast Stars product. For club at the end of stuff. And I personally played against West Coast Stars when they came out, they were as good or better than than the teams we played in that specific tournament. And and there's the 3D NorCal teams, and they were crazy good. Yeah.
So actually I never ended up playing with West Coast Stars.
Oh.
And I know, so I don't know how to say this. So at that time, it was super competitive because there was only one team for certain age groups.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually one of the worst players on any club team when I first joined. I joined the teams and they picked me up purely out of just because I would run and hit kids. And I wasn't big at all. I'm what am I, 5'7" 3/4 now, don't forget the 3/4 kind of deal. And I, to this day, am really surprised that I even made one of those club teams because I was having a lot of trouble with just basic stick skills because no one explained them to us. And so a lot of my friends played West Coast Stars, but I was one of the few that kept playing and had never played West Coast Stars. I didn't make the local box team, and I kept on asking how can I get invited to play for this box team, and they're like, well, we have this tournament, you want to play against them, at this local tournament. So you do, and I scored against them, and I was like, yes, that's right, that kind of thing. I was just trying to fight my way onto a field. To be honest, it was a little different for me. I learned how to shoot after my junior year. It was this whole crazy late bloomer sort of deal. And so the reason why I actually started facing off, which I learned how to do the summer before my senior year of high school, was because we had one of the best guys, but we only had one. And if he got hurt, I was like, well, we need another guy. It's another way I can get on the field if he's tired or anything. So I'll just start facing off too. And I started getting better and better. And eventually I actually got to replace him, which was crazy. I did it in like a couple of months because
Mm.
I got lucky, found a couple of guys who knew it and would be willing to explain it to me. And so this guy, Mitch McMichael, who played at Cornell, who then played for the now Vancouver Warriors, he played with them for a bit. He explained to me the basics of a face-off because, you know, I didn't know about moto grip or anything. I was just like kind of just going for it. And so, yeah.
How big was YouTube, and did you use YouTube at all? Because obviously, with being in an area that lacrosse might be not big, like the internet probably would have helped a ton.
Yeah, I watched so many YouTube videos. I think there was a point where I would like look up lacrosse on YouTube, and I, you know how like the color might change on the name when you clicked it. I'd watched almost every single one kind of deal because I needed instruction, and I was just so hungry to know, and I had to basically learn it. And a lot of the things I did learn came from just me trying to figure it out and like approach it like reverse engineer things. Like I would go watch a YouTube highlight and be like, how did he shoot like that? You know, I don't understand. And then I'd shoot, and then my mom would film me or something, you know, at a field after practice, be like, you're weird, you know, compared to the guy you're watching. And she'd show me the two videos, you know, I'd be like, yeah, you're right. And then, you know, that whole thing. So, but,
Yeah.
and, you know, me actually getting to at all learn lacrosse I'm very thankful to my parents because they supported me, especially my mom, who would like let me stay after practice. And like, you know, the coach would kind of like leave the gate unlocked for me for a couple more minutes. You know, he was supposed to lock it right away, but he'd just be like, yeah, you know, he's shooting a little extra, it's fine, you know. And so, yeah. But
Yeah, I definitely get that, the YouTube thing. Obviously, East Coast is definitely more lacrosse, but just I didn't really start playing lacrosse until I actually started playing overseas in England. And again, I just lived over there for a few years, but there was like one person who really knew how to play. Like the coach was an American guy, and I learned to shoot via the Kyle Harrison shooting videos and stuff like that.
I think I've seen the video.
Yeah. And like obviously nowhere close to, like you said, like compare the videos, like something looks wrong. But like that was like just being able to use YouTube and stuff like that. And even into like high school, like pulling up kids' highlights and be like, oh wow, like this kid does this really well. And just if you watch it enough, you can kind of break it down, like you said, and kind of find what you can do to change your game to emulate people that are looking so good on that film. And obviously that analytical type behavior definitely translated to how you ended up at Oberlin, and you ended up being a physics major. So you obviously have the brain to do that. How do you get from the Overlake School where you went to high school to Oberlin?
I started playing with the Seattle Stars, which is a club team in the area. I was a D-mid, and then later, very, very much later, they were like, oh, you can face off too. So I started doing that. But I was playing in various tournaments. I think the one that I was noticed at was Denver, and there was one in Denver that I don't remember what it's called. I think it's hosted, you know, by the University of Denver or something. And I was playing out there, and apparently one of my club coach sat down next to someone on a bus or something. And like, do you have anyone who can, you know, who's academically inclined and plays lacrosse, you know? And because this guy was having trouble finding that, I don't know. And then they were like, yeah, we have some guys, and they reached out to them, and I was one of them. And then they reached out to me, and it just kind of kept going from there. But it was one of the few schools that did reach out to me. I mean, I only had a couple of coaches call. And at the time I went into the summer with the goal of getting a school to say they'd be willing to have me on their roster, because I was still like learning stick skills, you know. And so I just tried to use hustle to get noticed. That, you know, when I was playing at tournaments and stuff, I would just try to play with the team and do my best and win. And that's how it ended up happening. Is they saw me as a D mid, and then someone who could maybe play two-way later on and has taken face-offs before. So they're like, yeah, you could be like a D mid that's, you know, utility. And so that's how I ended up at Oberlin. I didn't know about playing in a Midwest school, or I guess Ohio, you can consider it Midwest. I wasn't sure about it, because I told myself, you know, I'm going to play where there's mountains or water, because I'm from Seattle where there's both. So I was like, you know, the Colorado Rockies are there. You know, if you go to Colorado, I can go to the East Coast where there's water, you know, in the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. And I went to a place that had neither, and more corn, you know, and I was like, what's this going to be like? And then I visited, and it was actually a really good experience. The guys were really nice. People were there, and they were happy. It was weird because you visit other schools. I didn't get to visit the lacrosse teams, but you visit other schools and they all have very similar things. Like we have great academics, there's sports here, you can have fun. But Oberlin the people that I met that weren't on the team, that didn't know I was a prospective student, were excited about what they were talking about and what they were doing. And that's how I was like, okay, I'm sold. Like, these people are happy. And then when they found out I was a prospective student, they get even more excited, be like, we hope you can be as happy as we are here, wherever you end up.
Mm-hmm.
But, maybe you'll end up here. And I was like, whoa, that's a really powerful statement. So that's how I ended up out there.
That's cool. Yeah, I definitely, obviously, I'm currently a Kenyan, so that's really close drive.
Similar.
Definitely, it was very odd. I think you probably flew out when you visited and stuff, and I flew out, and like, oh, no, flights are no different, but then you drive, like, the closest airport I'm guessing for you is Cleveland, and then you drive, and it's like, oh, it's just like an hour and a half of just corn, and like, wow. And like, this is like, I don't know about in the West Coast, but like, I don't live near any corn, and like, it's just straight. And like, it was so weird. Like, even like the roads, like, oh yeah, you can just go like 60 miles per hour on like a road where there's houses. I'm like, what? Like that for
not that you should,
yes,
but you could, because there's no one there. Yeah.
Yes. And it was just like, this is so foreign, but then like you have these great academic institutions like Oberlin or like Kenyan, just kind of that's a lot of people, at least in the lacrosse world in the East Coast, I don't think kind of give enough of a shot, because like my college counselor always used to say, like, if Oberlin and Kenyan were like in New Hampshire or like Maine or like Massachusetts, like they'd be like, so many people would be like an SCAC school. And that's what, at least I don't know about your recruiting, but whenever I was talking to schools like Oberlin or like Kenyan that might not be like in like traditional areas of where those schools type kind of were, they'd be like, well, if you were to take it up and move it, it's like the campus is gorgeous. Like Oberlin's campus is amazing. And then it just in a different location. And if you're willing to kind of put up with that different location, like it can be an amazing time. Which obviously, how was your experience at Oberlin just kind of as a student?
It was great. I really enjoyed it. I made a lot of friends in and out of the lacrosse team. I think that's really important for, if anyone's watching this and is going to go and play in college, just don't get stuck in a bubble, But I got to do sort of two parallel worlds is kind of how I describe it. I had the people that I stuck with in my physics department that I studied with, and I did a little bit of computer stuff too as well. Did not get to minor, but I wanted to. And I got to just kind of pursue that as hard as I could. And with the support, my coach was like, yeah, your academics, they come first. You're here for an education, and just also prioritize lacrosse as much as you can. And so I prioritized lacrosse as well. And my whole goal starting out was to, perform well for my team on the lacrosse field, as well as do something with the physics. And so it's hard to, name goals within all these things. So I was like, okay, if I can, do anything as a conference recognition or something on the lacrosse field, I'll try for that. That's just some goal that you like put on your, you write it on your wall and you stick it there and you're like, this is something I'm going to try. But on the other side, on my academic side, I was like, well, I'm going to try to get invited to honors physics, which is, the faculty for the physics department, they invite certain students to do an honors thesis their senior year in research. And so I was like, I'm going to go for these things. And that kept me up with my grades because I had like a set goal. And then it kept me, prioritizing lacrosse as much as I could because I had a set goal. And then as a result, I actually got to do both. I got to, get certain, I got to be a captain of my team my senior year, which was like an honor just to be able to be one of the leaders on that team. And then also I got to do an honors thesis my senior year in physics, which was a crazy experience. It's hard to describe it because basically all of my time was put into these two things. And, I know that there's a lot of other things that you can do in college, but I wanted to try these two, I really wanted to go for it. So I got to do both. And that, I don't know if you get to do both everywhere else. I got to, because largely, you probably have a similar thing where the faculty at a school like Oberlin or Kenyan, they want to see you succeed. And so I'd be like, I have a lacrosse game, in 2 days. I have to finish these hours and hours of work. And I go to my professor and be like, what am I going to do? And he's like, well, good luck. Here's what I can tell you, in terms of support that I can give you. But other than that, good luck. And which I turned out all right. So it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
And then on the field at Oberlin, obviously you said the senior year you got the captaincy, got to be one of the leaders on the team.
Yeah.
How did you guys do as a unit, as a team in those 4 years? I know that the conference tournament was it's been around, but not like forever.
Yeah.
How do you guys, did you get into that tournament at all, or how did you play individually?
The team itself. So my first 2 years, it was the first time that we had gone. The Oberlin had a positive record in decades, multiple years in a row. And so it was really a turnaround team. And it's because, the head coach, his name is Topher Grossman, but he ended up kind of turning around the program by himself. But then my junior and senior year, the rest of the conference jumped up in skill level as well. I mean, they must have gotten new coaching as well. But, there's always the powerhouses within Division III, and two of them in our conference are, Owu and Denison. So they'd always been doing well, but some of the other teams also started to really pick it up. And teams that we would traditionally beat, we didn't beat, my junior and senior year. And it was actually really crazy to see. I was really impressed. But as a result, our record dropped a little my junior, senior year. My trajectory personally was my freshman year. I came in as a 2A mid, mainly defensive, and like a man down D mid or something like that. And then my sophomore year, our faceoff guy, he transferred, and so I had taken some my freshman year when he needed a break, but it became all on me, and I just did. I started working extra for it because I felt like I was a year behind. Even more behind than I was, because I only started facing off, a year or two before. And so this would be my third season playing lacrosse with any reps as a face-off guy. And so I ended up actually doing all right. I went like 70% or something that year. It was kind of wild. And I was a stand-up guy. I wasn't knee down. I was using an old superpower that I had, like, the superpower head. Mm-hmm. Not many guys use that either.
I used it.
Yeah.
Okay. In high school. Yeah.
Yeah. And I kept using that through college. I guess I had lost so many times in high school because I didn't know how to face off or do very much, but I could pick up a ground ball. Mm-hmm. So if I didn't win the clamp, I could pick up a ground ball. And that's what I did. I was just like, if you're going to beat me, I'm going to beat you in the second phase, which is a ground ball, and I'm going to get it. So I ended up doing all right. And in my junior year, my percentages didn't necessarily rise, but my performance kept getting better, and I started playing midi again, where I would stay on the field, or I would, play a little O or a little more D, even as a face-off guy. And then my senior year, I would dabbled a little bit in starting O mid or things like that. So I ended up playing the field quite a bit, even as a face-off guy.
Yeah, all face-off guys have those ambitions, I feel like, of wanting to stay on the field, like. And then oh no, it's run off. And then it's awesome that you kind of got to do that. And yeah, I used the superpower when I got into kind of like saying like, oh, this face-off thing could be kind of cool. Like freshman year, sophomore year of high school for me. And the only reason I did that is because I don't know do you know the side Sports Stop, the website?
Yeah.
Equipment. They would sell specific colors of the superpower for $20, even though the regular head cost $89. So like,
I did not know that.
Yeah. So I was getting like Kelly green or like light blue or just all these kind of weird like colored heads. And I did that for the first two. I also used the STX Professor, which had the similar deal with that. And I just dye them black and then, or like keep the color if I didn't have enough time. And it was just kind of a funny little thing I found with using that superpower. And like, that was when like you could keep the ball in the back of your stick. So I would just literally like run down and then just throw it as hard as I could. And if it hit the net, it hit the net. If it didn't, my attackman was there. And that's the only thing I remember about using the superpower, how much it would get stuck. You really just have to like really, really hit that out of there.
Yeah, I had a softball every time.
Yeah, I didn't know about softballs until 3 years into face-offing. So I was just like, this thing's getting really, really pinched. Like, this is weird.
Our softball team at Oberlin we have like a little indoor turf, which is one of the few schools that actually has like a little indoor section, which I loved. I would hang out there all the time. But the softball team sometimes would forget a ball or two, so I just borrow one for a couple weeks, give it back. But it was just like one of those things.
Yeah. In high school, how there's like the softballs, and then there's like the plastic ones that you put in the jugs machine to shoot, and like there's two different ones. But I
Okay,
talked to the softball coach at my high school, and she was like, "Well, yeah, we can't use these anymore because they don't have the grip enough. But if you want them, you can have them." So like the fully plastic softballs that they put in the machines so they could hit. I just stocked up on those, and I've used those ever since. Just kind of been like, yeah, you kind of have to talk to the softball teams at your respective schools.
Yeah, you got to make
to figure that make some friends.
Yeah.
Did you have, obviously, Kenyon, I know about the rivalries. Is Oberlin really big rivals with anyone athletically or for lacrosse?
We tend to, just because Kenyon, we're like the similar academics and everything. We kind of always, we like to compete at those things. But while I was there, I think you got the better of us. But there were some other rivalries. I think for a while there, at least early on in my college career, there were some games with Worcester where it felt like a rivalry game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it might not have been, but it kind of felt like it because we beat them, then they would beat us the next year when we beat them. So just like after a couple of times doing that, you're like, no, we gotta really go for it. So
100%.
Yeah.
And kind of after Oberlin, obviously it seemed like you wanted lacrosse kind of still in your lexicon of things. You graduated in 2017. 2018, you made the Japanese Worlds team and got to play in Israel. And you did really well. You guys got back into, I think, the blue group, if I'm thinking of the names correctly. How was that experience? Obviously, international lacrosse is completely different than what we play in the U.S., especially in college.
Yeah, that's a very long story that I'm going to try to shorten up. But this had actually been on my radar as a possibility since high school. I had thought about it, and I was like, it'd be really cool to represent, my mom is from Japan, and so I was like, to represent some part of my heritage. And so I had thought about it. I actually emailed them back in high school because, I graduated in 2013, and 2014 was the next World Game. So I was like, hey, what do I have to do to try out and try to do this thing? And I got an email back, all in Japanese, so it really tested my language skills. I was like, Mom, did I read this right? And what it was they were saying you have to live there because it's just culturally, it's one of the most hard-working cultures that I know of. And I had like a little bit of shock when I got there. I was like, why are you practicing for 4 hours and then hitting the wall for another 2 hours? I'm confused. This is 6 hours, But so I ended up deciding that I'll move out there after college, and I had to kind of set that up. So I continued taking Japanese classes just to make sure I was sharp for the first half of college. And then my junior year, I tried to find an internship out there, and through, some wild occurrences and networking, I found a way to apply to an internship over there, and I ended up getting it. So I got to work out there. And so while I was doing that internship, which was the summer before my senior year of college, I just did a bunch of scouting around to see what teams I could play with. How does it work? What club teams are there for adults? How do you make how can you try out for the national team? And it turned out I really did have to move there. So then that academic year, throughout my senior year, I was interviewing, trying to find a job in Japan because I really wanted to make this thing work. And I ended up getting one, moving out there, and started playing with a team called Advance. And they're like it's a men's league in Japan, but there's like a national league for men's league over there. And there's a couple of different leagues you can play in. Okay. And within those couple of leagues, there are also tiers to them. And so there's no professional lacrosse out there, but and all the guys work full time while training for this. Even the national team guys, they work full time while playing. And so I got to join this team and play throughout their season, and we got to make it, to some portion of the tournament. I think we got third in Japan. The top two are really, really good. And if, anyone who watches lacrosse, if you go over there, you'll be really impressed with their skills. And so that through that tournament and through that play in those games, I got to get invited to a tryout for the Japanese national team. So that their tryouts were sometime in December of 2017. I don't know how much in the calendar years you want me to get into this, but basically I just tried out. It was 2 different Saturdays. Yeah. Each was 4 hours, and they would just have you running the whole time doing different stuff. I was like, wow, this is a lot, because in the US we only go for 2 hours at a time. even if you go to the weight room before that, it's like, that's only 3 hours, it's hard to go for 4 hours straight doing live drills the entire time with, 135-pound middies that are running really, really fast everywhere. So it was also kind of wild because I actually got there and because it was international rules, it lends itself really well to people timing whistles. And so I was not good at that because I've been playing in the NCAA. So we don't time whistles. I don't know how to time a whistle very well. And so I was losing all my faceoffs, and I realized this is not the way I'm going to be able to make the national team. And I remembered I had played the field before, and I was like, okay, well, I got to try out as a midi or an attackman. And so I made the Japanese national team or not the full national team. I made the 50-man roster, which was later cut down. I made the 50-man roster as an attackman. And then I made it. Then throughout the tryouts, I actually shifted back to midi and then to face-off. So I played 3 different positions throughout the whole thing, and that's crazy. That's over the course of January to May. And where almost every weekend or every other weekend we would train for Saturday, Sunday, and when I mean like Saturday, Sunday, I mean the whole day. Yeah. So we would arrive there something like 8:30 a.m. and we would leave at 8:30 p.m. Where you would get there, you might have a couple hours of film or practice in the morning, then you have lunch, then you have 4 more hours of practice in the afternoon, and then you have a meeting for an hour, and then you go, and Sunday you do the same thing.
So you're on like that NFL training camp.
Yeah, but like for 5 months.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And all of the guys have families and work full time. Like a lot of them have kids, and this is what it means to them to play this sport. Like this is what they do, and it's just like it's accepted and it's known that you put in your heart and soul into doing this. And so through the whole thing, almost up until just right up until the end. So like January, February, March, April, I was not ever considered what's called the travel squad, which is the team that would go to Israel. Because all the other players were so skilled, it was like really hard to compete with them. You had to like pick it up. But during the week, I was just trying to catch up basically. And then they also switched me to 3 different, positions from attack, midi, and then face off. So I like remember how to face off partway through this whole process. And then there was this, just in the last couple of weeks, I actually got to try and be on the travel squad for a little bit. And I started just doing well at the end there. And a couple of weeks before it ended, that's when I really, really caught my stride. And then it culminated with a 3-day training camp in the mountains in Japan. Like we all arrived at this place where we all, just stay there for a couple days. And you play 18 hours of lacrosse in 3 days. Nice. And the way it works is the Japanese national team, because, they're supposed to be the best players in Japan, they would basically put us through gauntlets of playing the best college and men's teams.
In Japan, or just in general?
In Japan. Or have like Team England's under 23 team also traveled to come play us for like a day or 2 in a row. And then the Australian national team came and played us for 4 days in a row as well. But we do these gauntlets where we just like play many teams. And so they had us in the same day scrimmage against like 2 of the or 3 of the top college teams in Japan in a row.
It's like 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. So like we play, like basically equivalent of 2.5 games, because they cut out some of the quarters or something. Mm-hmm. But those college teams, they're fresh. And so they would just throw them at us. They were like, go for it, go for it, go for it. And it was just this crazy experience. And at the end of the second night, they announced the national team, and my name was on it. And I couldn't believe, because, these players are so skilled. Like, they're so fast, they're so skilled. And I was just so excited to get that chance. The other crazy thing that I could mention here is that my dad's side heritage, he has like European Jewish heritage. Mm-hmm. His parents, they escaped World War II and basically moved to the U.S. because they were, my grandfather on that side basically hid in the woods because like his house was ransacked by Nazis trying to come and find him, and so he survived in the woods. So the World Games being in Israel with that Jewish heritage was also crazy. And so I was like, I'm going to play for the Japanese national team, which is my mom's side, in Israel for my dad's side. And I was like, that's like a crazy collision of coincidence that I hadn't anticipated, because originally it was supposed to be in England in 2015. So that was like a crazy switch, and it kind of meant I had to make it. And so that really motivated me to keep going. And so then the experience of going to Israel was really cool. After we made the national team, the Team Japan would travel around the country and either teach or play. And, we continued training on our own. And then it was really cool because the community kind of came together. The Japanese sports communities are really tight knit, and like they have more people in the stands than I did in college. They might have more people in the stands than some pro teams sometimes. It's pretty crazy. They have hundreds of people every game in the stands, unless they're hours and hours away. But if they're in the city, people are showing up and they're excited. They get into it, so it's really cool to play over there. And a lot of those people actually volunteered to be our support while we were in Israel. And so when we had film, they would break down the film for us. They would So all the film was sent to these college or men's league players. They would all break down the film and annotate everything. And then they would send it back to us fully cut up and clipped with all these notes on it and stuff. And then they would tell us, what they're seeing and what they think. And it's a really cool way of actually getting the community involved. And I was like, this is absolutely genius, because now you have people paying attention to international lacrosse. Even if they're, somewhat new to this sport, they can be a part of the national team.
Yeah.
And I thought that was one of the coolest things that I've ever seen. And so we literally had over 100, it was like 120, maybe 150 people who had just volunteered their hours, and keeping in mind that our games were in Israel, so they're in the middle of the night for them.
Yeah.
So it was just this crazy, so that was really cool. And then we got to play in Israel. That was a really cool experience, just hearing, people speaking their own language and having their own cultures and playing the same sport we are. And it's hard. Yeah, that's also something that's hard to put into words. It's very, if you get a chance, you should really play internationally. I mean, you did, because you got to play in England, but for other people, that's a really special feeling. And then to make it back to the Blue Division, of course, we had to play Team Israel.
How was that? In what teams did you have to play to get to where you were?
Oh man, so we had to play a couple of
You played Jamaica? Was that in the same group?
We did not play Jamaica. So we ended up having to play, I don't know if I'm going to remember them in order, all of them, but we did play teams like Norway, or maybe it was Netherlands. And then who did we play early on? Goodness.
Do you have Puerto Rico? Was that in the other?
We did play Puerto Rico. They beat us. They had a bunch of really good American players. And that was really cool to see. Actually, it was sort of a good example of the stylistic difference that the Japanese players have. In Japan, the lacrosse strategy is very different. They do a lot of for offense, they do a lot of quick passing back and forth, fast dodges, one after another. And as a result, they end up confusing defenses a lot of the time. And so defenses get very, very good at tracking people, defending 1-on-1 against fast players, and also doubling the ball when someone makes a mistake, because there's so many dodges in a row. One of them is very likely to, accidentally dodge into the middle or into a double team, because they're so quick. It's a pass and go, and you're just full speed ahead. And so they had really aggressive quick doubles. They had all these kinds of things. And the Team Puerto Rico had picked up on that, and they started taking advantage of weaknesses within the strategies that we had developed in Japan, right? Because it's not necessarily the same. And so certain styles are very good against others. And so they found out that they could do this one thing that would basically that was very successful against us, and they got 5 or 7 points off of it or something crazy.
Yeah, when you have that, that's really tough to even come back from. Period.
Yeah. We the adjustment was just too late. And then and we also got to beat Scotland, who beat us the year before, which was cool. And then when leading up to the Israel game,
we had done scouting. You know, we know they have Max Adler at the time, who I got to play with later, which was a really cool experience. But he's you know, a professional player. He was leading the MLL in percentage or something for that year, and we were like, we have to beat him over 50% and on faceoff. And so I was one of the faceoff guys, and this other guy who'd kind of like taken me under his wing. He was the other national team guy who had his name was Chris Gino, and he had played in the previous World Games, so he knew like a lot of how things work, how to take care of your body with that many games in a row, you know, things like that. Like little things that he would just tell me, you know, make sure you're okay here, or you know, in this when we have a momentum swing, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to the cage every time because the games are 2 hours, like they're really long in international. So he told me a lot of that kind of stuff. And so Chris and I would have to team up together and take on their pro player. And so that game was really back and forth. We ended up doing well. I ended up getting like a hot hand for a bit. And so Chris was just like, go for it. You know, like just you're doing well right now. Just keep it up. And so he would let me take many in a row because we used to like alternate or something like that. And so I actually did all right that game. And I think I won most of the ones that I got to go out there. I also, like, Max was the only face-off guy on his team. So he was probably having a tough time going against two guys so I could be more fresh, you know? But that was a really cool experience to then kind of have both worlds collide from both of my parents' sides, you know, playing for Team Japan, my mom's side, playing against Team Israel, which was my dad's side. And that was really cool. My parents actually got to fly out and come see it. And so did my now fiance. So she was at the time my girlfriend. She flew out to come see it, and now we're engaged. So that's really cool.
That's really cool. Congratulations. That's such a cool thing to fill. And like, Max obviously is amazing as an athlete and stuff. He wasn't the only guy, right? That was a pro on that Israel roster. I think Max Sebald was on that team. I'm trying to think. Wasn't the goalie? Was he I'm just pulling it up right now.
I don't remember. Yeah, you probably know. If you have it there, let me know. I don't remember who else was.
Kyle Bergman. I think he was a pro guy. Ian Kaddish is another guy. And then I thought the goalie was Isaac Paparo. He plays in the Whip Snakes right now. Mm-hmm. He was a Connecticut guy. Is it Eric Schneider is his name? I think. It really doesn't matter what his name is, but I just remember them having like a really, really good goalie.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was what you also kind of saw.
We also saw that. I mean, we had to get the good shots in, except, you know, the Japanese players with their, like, just with the quick passing and dodging, they could get in tight shots off. One of the guys looked like he was holding a tennis racket with how quickly he could get a shot off inside. I've never seen it. I've never seen another player do what he did. And, you know, we've watched, you know, coming from the U.S., I've seen the MLL growing up, and then I knew about it late, but, you know, you still get to see all these really good players, and he has the best inside shot I've ever seen. I saw him one time. He had a pass that was a little off his box, right? And so he had to dive for it. And he dove for it, caught it, and finished all before he hit the ground, but like the ball looked like it had bounced off his stick.
That's crazy.
He could catch it and finish and aim all within the same like split second. I was like, I've never seen any player do that before you know what I mean, that fast. I've never seen that. So that was really cool. So yeah, we you know, even with those good goalies, when you have doorstep shots, like I don't, you know, you can't. It's very hard to save that.
Yeah.
You know, so, but yeah, that was really that game was unreal because they were so stacked, and we were like, we all have to do our job best of our ability, and we actually started getting a little bit of a following because we were the only team who did not. I was the only U.S. player on that team, but I'm also a Japanese citizen, and also I speak the language. Like all of my communication with them was in Japanese. There was no English. Like maybe sometimes there was a word because they knew a lacrosse word, but they were all, you know, only spoke Japanese. And so, like, for example, when we sang our anthem, everybody sang it in their native language. We all knew it, and things like that. Like I made sure to memorize and make sure I remembered that anthem. Yeah. And like, so other teams that were also very, you know, home based, like Germany has a lot of German players. So, you know what I'm talking about. Like Australia has a lot of
Yep.
Australian players, not American players. Those teams started coming to our games and cheering for us because we were so homegrown.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I grew up visiting my family in Japan. Those sorts of things. So, we ended up getting a little bit of a fan following throughout it, and it's kind of fun.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And
Yeah.
like I'm very heavy on German descent. My grandmother's first generation American. And they're like, even for guys like Chris Mattis, who's played in the past, who's an American citizen with very heavy German heritage, who plays pro. Yeah, he's pretty good. And one of the founders of the Faceoff Academy. And I don't think they let him play in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, just based on, or he might have played. I'm unsure. I know he played in Denver when they had it in the U.S., but I don't. I would have to check the roster to see if he played in the 2018. And I know that going forward, having communication with their coaching staff, that you can't be American, or if you can be a dual citizen, but you have to have that citizenship and be able to practice. Once a month.
Which is a difference from. So the FIL rules, the Federation of International Lacrosse, has very different rules. So you just have to, I think, like establish lineage within some number of generations. But some of these teams take it much more strictly. They want it to be a home team.
Yeah.
So, I had to move there for a year and a half. I lived there. And honestly, I thought I was gonna live there for much longer. And that, there's many reasons why I moved back. One of which is I wanted a career change, and the other is my now fiance was here, and I was like, well, I don't think you're ever coming over here. It'd be hard because she got into medical school. So I was like, I got to move back. But yeah, no, I had to live there. And it was cool, before and after the tournament, and, realizing that you represent the people around you and the weight of what that means, like I'd get messages from my friends in Japan and they'd be like, we're watching your game. I'm like, 2 a.m. What do you do? And they just, we want you to win, like, keep it up, and it was a really cool experience, like being able to represent my friends. And it was, the community was awesome. I always want to like tour people around Japan and be like, come to a game. You gotta go see this.
I know that, I think Jerry Raganese has set up a group that goes over and plays like a US all-star based team against some group in there. Have you got to participate in that on the Japanese side of things?
Yeah, so I actually got to play in that in 2018. I got to play against Jerry. That was a good time. He's a fun guy. We got ramen afterwards. I don't know if
big ramen guy.
I don't know if anyone knows, but he really likes his ramen.
Yeah.
So we ended up after the game going and finding some ramen. It's a big surprise. I think he and some other I don't remember who organizes it. I think another person was Matt Gibson, who helped really like run that thing for the American side. On the Japanese side, there's guys like Kai Iwamoto and other guys who run it from over there, and it's awesome. Also, a lady named Sachiko, she also is a big part of that whole process. And I got to play that in 2018. When I got to do that, I got to go against Jerry Raganese and who's the other face-off guy? Brendan Fowler.
Mm-hmm.
That was awesome. Yeah, going against those two, they're strong guys.
Yeah, yeah, they're pretty good in their position, and obviously their knowledge of the face-off in general. And I know something very specific to Japan is this league that I've seen kind of via String King social media. That's kind of like a 3x3 type league, like a 3-on-3 league that's similar to like what Casey Powell's been doing with speed lacrosse. Have you got to play in that, or do you know about that at all?
I do know about it. I did not get to play in it before I moved back, and I was really wanted to. What it is I think a bunch of the guys who are sort of retiring from the physicality of the men's leagues wanted to continue playing because it's fun, and they wanted to play sort of indoor. And so there's a lot of indoor facilities in Japan that for like futsal. Mm-hmm. And so they got some small box goals or something, and they kept playing but with low contact. And so like these guys who have to make it to work on Monday, don't want to get, hurt. And so they can just keep playing and have all this skill. But they were also like, there were some ex-national team guys on there. There's some, and some current players would also go to these things, but ended up being these really high-skilled, really fast-paced, really fun games. And so I used to watch all their stuff. Like they would post things on social media. And I like everything. I loved it because it was so fun and looked so cool. And so they also have a women's side of it as well, not just men's.
That's super cool.
Yeah. And so it actually can be co-ed as well because it's,
it's not the contact's not the issue.
Yeah,
it's just
exactly.
the stick skills.
I think one of the women's teams just beat like some of the original guys who were doing
Who
it or
made it?
something a couple times. Yeah,
That's
it's pretty funny. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I think just I've done some stuff like with my high school. We did stuff with Casey Powell in Florida, and he
Uh-huh.
runs a similar idea, but it's on the beach.
Oh, nice.
And he calls it speed lacrosse, and it's like you play 3-on-3, then someone drops back a net of the defensive side, and then
Yeah.
you use like a softer ball, and like
Yeah,
it seems like a fun time. And he does a bunch of charity events for lacrosse guys that obviously there's definitely a community in Florida of people that played lacrosse, and like there's a lot of older guys in Long Island and in the States. Like I've seen now so many kids from Florida already, like really, really doing well in lacrosse because you have like retirees from Long Island, like, oh yeah, I can pick up reffing and I can coach. And like, I love the sport. And it's kind of cool to see how that kind of created a little lacrosse community down there. But in kind of after your world games, you obviously wanted to obviously you can tell you still love lacrosse and you wanted to kind of keep it in your life. How did the Denver Outlaws kind of opportunity create itself?
Yeah, originally, so I had some film from the World Games and from that exhibition game where the American All-Stars come over and play with the Japanese players. And so I took some of that film and I sent them out to teams to see like, hey, can I try out? And originally I wanted to really try out for the Ohio Machine because I was planning on moving over towards Pittsburg, and that was the closest team. And so that's where I'm at now. I'm living in Pittsburgh, but just for my master's program, my fiance's medical school is here. So and so I was really trying to do that, but then they shut it down, so there's no more Ohio Machine right now.
Yeah.
Which if this ever gets lots of views, I would really like if the MLL brought back the Ohio Machine. Just throwing that out there. All right. But then I started coaching in Denver just for a little bit. Well, like in between my master's program and moving back to the U.S., I started living in Denver for actually it was Boulder, but for like 8 months, just as an in-between. And I was coaching in the area, coaching for CU Boulder. They have like a D1 club there.
Yeah.
And those players are also great. They're a lot of fun, really good. And the Denver Outlaws GM was our defensive coordinator. And so when the Ohio Machine fell through, I was like, hey, can I go to the tryouts for Denver Outlaws? Because I still want to play really badly. I love this game and I'm not done yet. And the whole other thing that I don't know if I made this clear, I was still getting better. Like because I was such a late bloomer, and basically I actually like really picked up and started playing lacrosse well my freshman year of college. I was still getting better every year by a lot more. You know what I mean? Like, when every year you're like, I'm 150% of what I was last year. Like that was still happening. And so I was like, I got to keep seeing how far this goes. And so he said, yeah, I can try out. And so I tried out and I ended up making it as a practice squad member, which is really exciting. I made it through the training camps, the tryouts, all those things. And that was really cool. It was a different experience to get to play with a professional team, especially in the US where lacrosse is really big, and playing with players of that caliber. That was really special, and I'm very thankful for John Cohen, the GM of Denver Outlaws, for letting saying, yeah, just come to the tryouts and we'll see what you have. And they let me train with Max basically before games and stuff. I got to like practice with Max Adler, and so that was really cool. What else?
There's a good amount, well, not good amount, but compared to the rest of the teams in that league, I believe there has been, maybe I could be wrong in the number, around 4 Japanese players at one or another time on the roster or on the training squad. Are those all guys that played with you on the national team, or are those guys that kind of, like you said, that men's league or that college type kind of tried to come over to the U.S. to kind of further their game?
So they all were either in the running or at some point on the Japanese national team, I believe. But they weren't all on the national team at the time that they were playing. And in fact, there was the first player to ever get to play in a game and start, or was a goalie, Kai Uemoto. He came over at the same time as Toma. Toma also got to play for the Outlaws as a practice squad member. And I don't know how it all works out, but I think he didn't get to play with the Japanese national team largely because he had to live here to do the Denver Outlaws. So he couldn't fly back and forth, you know, and that would have been hard. So yeah. And then after that, the first Japanese player to ever get a goal in a game was Kota Kurashima, who played attack for them in 2018 at the same time I did. So the three of us were like kind of you know, brothers there, and it was a lot of fun. But I don't know, you know, I think that part of the reason why so many end up on Denver Outlaws is just because it's, you know, might be the closest one to Japan. I don't know, because, you know, I'd say why Denver's the closest geographically. I don't know why they all end up out there, or just the first person who made it was on Denver Outlaws, and now Denver the staff has keyed into the fact that those players that are coming from Japan are really skilled. But it's in addition to that, they're also just really good team guys. Like, the culture is very selfless over there, and you do what it takes to help out your teammates. So, you know, like Kai, if he's not starting that game, he will be out there before and after everyone, just making sure that all the shooters got the shots they need. And so he'll be a goalie in cage for anyone. If you want to take doorstep rips, like he'll be there in the goal for you, because he wants his team to win. Yeah. And so that's the kind of people that come out of Japan. And so I think the staff sees that they're not only really good, they're not only really skilled, they're also just really good guys to have on the team. They're really good at supporting their teammates and making sure everyone's doing well, even if they're not playing. So, and then when they do play, they're going to execute.
Yeah. You saw, I kind of follow Kai on social media, and it's really cool to see him. Obviously, like, it's definitely a different culture, and you can kind of see how he's kind of transitioned, at least via his social media, which has been really cool to see, and kind of see how he's kind of gotten that spot. And it does seem like you said, that selfless type deal, like, that's noticed by players I've talked to on the Outlaws and stuff like that. Do you see like anything change? Obviously, there's now 2 major professional leagues for the sport outdoors. Do you see kind of the opportunity now that some players wanted to move around in league-wise for either yourself or other players from Japan to kind of continue to make rosters and get playing time?
I mean, yeah, as long as there's more teams and they're you know, willing to give them a chance, I think there will be more movement from international players, not just from Japan, but from many other countries. You know, like you said, there are other European-based. I think we talked about this before, but there are other European-based players that are also very good. But Japan's very, like, the skills are right up there. You know, I think the biggest difference for them is just strategy, and so it looks like they have a lower IQ just because their strategy is different. But if you give them a chance to learn, they'll pick it up not only super fast, but they'll also, I think they can do it just as well. And so I'm excited to see how the future shakes out. Personally, I'd love to keep playing. I mean, and so we'll see how that goes. This year was a little tough because there were no tryouts. Yeah. And so, like, that's sort of how I've been making these teams, is just showing up at tryouts and doing my best. So hopefully next year we have tryouts.
And then at the same time, you mentioned a little bit in Denver, or Boulder, sorry. You kind of obviously have taken coaching as a part of your life and part of the game to kind of stay with it while you can. I've personally got to see one of the schools I was looking at for undergrad, Colorado College. They have a yearly scrimmage with the Boulder team, and like, Colorado College makes a tournament every year, and you see the Boulder team was like just with, when I saw them play on my visit, they were like neck and neck, and that's a club team. And that obviously that was a pretty high level of lacrosse, especially considering how they do in the rest of the U.S. and versioning for club. But right now, or in the past, you've out of Pittsburgh, you've coached kind of at Chatham University. What has that kind of been like in terms of being around the college game and in the NCAA level, but not playing?
Well, it's been tough because you want to play. Every time I stepped on a field, it's like, I really want to put on a helmet. And so some practices I may or may not have put on a helmet and shown my stuff. But it's been really cool. I wanted to continue being involved in some way. And there's a little less lacrosse out here in the off seasons, at least for men's leagues, because, you know, on season for men's leagues or pros are the summer. Yeah. And so, you know, the spring and fall and winter, there's a little less going on. And so I wanted to keep involved. And Chatham, luckily, one of their practice fields is actually a walk away from my house. And so I was like, you know, if you're, you know, I went to the head coach, Phil Dodson, at the time. He's moved on to another program, but I was like, if you'll have me, I'd love to coach your face-off guys or anything else you need. And I'd love to just, you know, be able to stay involved with lacrosse in Pittsburgh. And that's what I've been doing so far. And it's been really cool. This next year, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with the season. I also personally don't know what my what I'll be able to do with everything that's been going on. But yeah, I'd like to keep involved with lacrosse out here as well. And yeah, it's been really it's awesome. It is fun. It is hard to watch other guys play and compete, but it is fun still, and it's very different. It's rewarding in another way. And one of the best feelings you can get as a coach is when you might have given someone feedback, or you gave them a tip, and then they go use it in the game, and they come to you like, hey, I did that thing and it worked, and you're like, I'm really excited for you. Like that's just really fulfilling. So yeah.
That's awesome to hear. Especially with other people, like there's a reason everyone wants to play and they love the game, and to kind of stay with that in addition to maybe a men's league or a box league or something like that, where you can just kind of like you said, like especially in Japan, they do just kind of do it on the side, but also have your full-time job and have a family and stuff like that. And it's kind of really cool to have that opportunity to be able to coach and kind of continue what you learned and pass that on to other people, which is really cool. And kind of closing, is there obviously it really seemed like that experience in Israel was really strong with you. Is there something besides that really kind of will always stay in your mind when you think of lacrosse and a lacrosse memory?
Yeah, but it wasn't like necessarily a good thing at the time. It was sort of a turning point. So back in high school, when I was just starting to really take lacrosse seriously, I hadn't made varsity for, a couple, like either first 2 years or something like that. And well, I mean, keep in mind that said something about my skill when varsity was like 20 kids, and there were only 30 kids on the, or 35 kids in the whole program. So JV was a very small team. It was almost harder to make JV, but so I started taking it much more seriously. And I made varsity also largely because they didn't have a junior varsity one year. And I was like, oh, I'm on varsity now. And the first game of the season, I worked really hard in that off season, because I was like, I really want to take this sport seriously now, and like not just do it recreationally. I want to try to compete for, playing on the field and stuff. And then that first game it was super rainy, as Seattle always is, because I grew up in the Seattle area. It was super cold. My parents showed up, and I didn't step on the field, and we were, and it was like I got to stand there for 60 minutes, and there's only like 18 kids on this team right now. So there's only so many kids that can get on the field, right? And those other kids need a rest. And I didn't touch the field, which meant something about me. And I was like, this is indicative of how I play. You know what I mean? I'm not good enough yet, even on this small team, to compete. And so it sort of was like a mirror, right? Like I had to take a look at myself and realize where I was and what I wanted and where the difference was. Mm-hmm. And after that game, my parents have a rule about not quitting things until like the season, or if you're doing music, you do a recital, or so you have to do it till the end, at least one season. Mm-hmm. And they said, we'll make an exception to the rule. You can quit lacrosse because you're clearly, you put in this time, you got better, and it wasn't noticed, and and it's really hard for you to just stand out there for 60 minutes in the rain and the cold. And because it was also hard for them. I think largely they also just didn't want to have to stand out there in the rain and the cold watching me not play. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, I want to make it so they have to play me. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, I want to become good enough that it would be, it would be a bad idea to not play me. And that was sort of a turning point in my lacrosse career, because like I went from the kid who couldn't pass and catch, and just ran as hard as I could the whole time. That was basically what I did. I was just a body on the field. And then I turned into a lacrosse player. I started hitting the wall much more. I was going to the gym much more seriously. I was shooting on my own time all the time. I practiced faceoffs, 30 minutes every night before bed, or kind of deal like every day. I was stretching all the time. I was just trying to do anything I could to get better. And that's what gave me my whole, like that game was my turning point. And I'm forever grateful for that moment where it just shifted my mindset. I realized that it's like, it's not just going to take effort. It's going to take more than the next guys. And then always find someone who's better than you and try to be as good as, if not better than them. And that was a huge shift in my world. And that's what allowed me to do so many other things, and not just lacrosse. You know, that's how I could get through physics tests that were 3 questions and unlimited time with open internet. And, you could look at anything up and you still wouldn't be able to finish the physics test. And so like, I could look at those challenges and just be like, I'm going to give everything I have, because I've made that decision from a very early stage in my life, and so I'm going to carry that with me forever. That mindset that came from that one game has changed my entire outlook on the world. And I'm very thankful for that.
That's amazing to hear. And obviously you said off the field, it makes a difference, but on the field, I don't think I said enough how good you were in college. You were all team NCAC, all team, all region. And you were on the honor roll at the same time for the entirety of everything, as well as being the team MVP for Team Japan in that kind of tournament style. But it's been awesome talking to you and kind of learning more about your story. Where can people follow you on social media?
I have an Instagram. Let me just double check how I spelled it, but I think it's my first name, Kinori, Kinori, and then SR, which is it's my middle and last name, because I wanted to keep both sides of my family. My middle name is Sugihara, and R is Rosnow, my last name. So I wanted to keep both cultures especially after that experience in Israel. So it's Kinori SR on Instagram. And so, yeah, that's the only social media I have. I really don't do much else. I'm not super active, but I feel like maybe I should be,
Well, yeah, it's been awesome learning more about, obviously, another NCAC player. And make sure you give him a follow and check it out. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to chat today.
Thank you, Ian. It's been a lot of fun.